This has been an area where traditionally we've seen some failures, and rigs have come down where pitting and crevice corrosion occurs in that area.
So as you guys all know, we just went through this kind of harrowing experience where we picked up 3 sailors that had a broken mast. All right, we got them back. Like, they're happy. I've got 3 other people with Bavaria 44s that said, hey, my rig failed the same exact way. They sent me pictures. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got to figure out why this is happening. I contacted Bavaria. They didn't get back to me. I'm sure they don't want bad press. This pertains to the dismasting and rescue that we did. This boat is called a Bavaria 44 Ocean. I didn't even really think it was Bavaria's fault because Sullivan makes the rig, right? And I thought maybe they had spec'd the rig to be like at the upper limit of those toggles. Because I have, for instance, on my boat, which is an Oyster, which is a very well-built boat, my linear drive from my autopilot is spec'd at the maximum, and I've chewed through like 3 sets of teeth on that thing, and it's just not powerful enough. It's not strong enough. And I thought this was one of those cases, but actually, through talking with Chris, he's come up with another solution to this thing that sounds a lot more viable.
So what we were talking about was whether the fittings that are used on the boats are rated for the loads that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And if they're experiencing failures due to them being, as you kind of suggested, maybe they're just maxed out at the end of their structural capacity. And I think that that's probably not the case. I think that the designers, they do a good job of speccing that out, and they're rated. But through use and exposure to the elements, that they become corroded in areas where it's not visible. And so that's what we were talking about on these turnbuckles, that this has been an area where traditionally we've seen some failures, and rigs have come down where pitting and crevice corrosion occurs in that area. So the suggestion is to put Tef gel on both of these areas and smush it around, and then wipe off all the excess and make it clean, so that area is, first of all, it's a little bit lubricated. That's kind of cool, but it just prevents any moisture getting in there, and it seems to prevent the crevice corrosion from happening. We don't see anywhere near as pitting, in that area. If we do that, there's a number of other areas in a sailboat rig where you could do that too, where we start to look for that sort of corrosion. Just where stainless steel contacts other stainless steel. Certainly where it contacts aluminum, any dissimilar metals like that. The Tef gel seems to be, I don't know if it's the best thing in the world, but it's what we have now. It really seems to be working. So nylon washers, insulators, Tef gel, things of that nature. We talk about chain plates a lot, and where those fail on the deck, and why in the deck sandwich they get the crevice corrosion there. And if that happens when there's moisture going down, the sealant is failed, and you're getting some moisture in your chain plates, and that invites the crevice corrosion in that area too. But you also have to think about the tangs at the top of the mast and how the rigging is attached to the mast. Typically they're stainless steel plates. A lot of the newer rigs have changed to a different style, but there's a lot of older boats out there that still have the stainless steel plates, and those are your chain plates in the sky, is what I like to call them. They got to be lightweight because of where they are. You want to get as much weight out of the rig as possible, but they got to be really strong. They're doing every bit as much work as the chain plates are, but they're much smaller and they're up there. That's one of the reasons I think it's super important to take a rig apart every 15 years. Take everything apart and see where the corrosion is happening, because it's happening somewhere. Yeah, so full-time cruiser is going to put a lot more wear and exposure on their rig, I think. Actively sailing the boat, and then typically go to places where it's saltier and more tropical, and I would go, inspection should be really start happening at 6, 7, 8 years, and rigging replacement, you're going to be looking at closer to 12 years.
Wow.
maybe 10 years.
Wow.
It just depends. If in 10 years you've done a couple of circumnavigations, well, by all means, let's take the rig out of the boat and have a look and see what's going on.
And you know this from 30 years doing this. You actually rigged boats, and then 15 years later, the same boats have come back to you, right?
Got to take them apart. Yeah.
And you've seen where, like, okay, let's get down into the nitty gritty and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the piece that broke on Yara that caused the mast to come down. This is called a toggle. This little piece on the bottom. This is actually a really stout one, especially for the size of wire that this goes to. And what this is it goes right here. This is it right here. So this is the chain plate right here. That's a big ass piece of metal that goes way down into the boat. I mean, this is like 12 inches long. And then this is just a cover welded onto it. And then this is the outer stay, and this is the inner stay. So this is what we're changing out here with pretty much the same stuff. And then the bigger one on the outside, right? So I was thinking, you know, that toggle probably is spec'd incorrectly, but Chris told me I don't think it is. I think it's the crevice corrosion that happens, and he's got 30 years looking at these boats, and I think he's right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Makes total sense. Hey, check this out. I wanted to show you guys this. This pertains to the dismasting and rescue that we did. This boat is called a Bavaria 44 Ocean. Actually, I should do it this way. Bavaria 44 Ocean. This is a much different boat than the Bavaria 44 that we ran into. This is a center cockpit. Not a big deal, not a huge difference, but look at the rigging of this boat. This rigging is a hell of a lot stronger than the rigging that was on that boat. I mean, this looks like real rigging. Yes, they put screws in it, which I don't really love, and these turnbuckles aren't really the best. They're a little bit cheaper, and it looks like whoever swaged to these had a swager that just did real monster kind of swages. If these do crack, they crack here or here. So I'm not a big fan of this kind of swage. I'm not a big fan of this turnbuckle, but look at these toggles. They're so much bigger. So much bigger. Look at this. I wonder what happened there. I mean, the whole boat just looks meatier and beefier. I bet it weighs way more. I'm gonna go look up the specs of the Bavaria 44 Ocean and the Bavaria 44, and I bet you we're gonna talk about that right now, because this is eye-opening. So, you know, it's not Bavaria's fault. Bavaria makes a boat for the ocean crossings. It's got bigger rigging. It's the fault of the owners trying to take those boats. You know, that you can make a Bavaria 44 into a Bavaria 44 Ocean, change the rigging, make it bigger, make it stronger, make it more safe. How long would you say that we would have on a very thin toggle? Like, say I bought a Bavaria and it's got the thinner style toggles. How long would we have before we needed to look at that?
I can't answer that question. You know I can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible, because there's so many different variables to that, and how thin are we talking, and what would it be? I just can't.
Yeah. How about some more generalities, like what can we do to look at the rigging? You mentioned before in the interview that's not working anymore that you don't use the dyes and the 3-part sprays.
I just use magnifying, glasses, and to look at them, clean them up. Sometimes you don't want to clean them up a lot, because the rust will show you where the crack is. So if you go in there right away and you Scotch-Brite scrubby them, you might be taking away the evidence that you're looking for. So, but the swedges, when there's cracks in there, it's usually pretty obvious. It's not common to find cracks in swedges that are younger than 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. Depends on the boat, depends on the load, depends on where it's been sailed and all of that kind of thing. But by and large, and then San Diego is a very different area than San Francisco, where, for 6 months out of the year, it's blowing 25, 30. And here we just never see those kind of winds.
A lot of people have told me that even a boat on the hard is taking enough friction with the wind, and even a boat sitting in the slip is also the rigging goes bad at the same rate as you would be using it. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. the only way to preserve your rigging from wearing out, if you're not using it, is to take the mast down, take the rigging off, store the rigging inside, coiled up nicely.
Who does that?
Not too many people I know. Put them on a nice pillow.
Yeah. Sleep with them at night.
Sleep with them at night. Yeah, pet them.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready, then put them back on your rig and put your mast up. But
interesting.
The mechanical fittings, these mechanical fittings, these do have a longer life. These have a longer lifespan than swedged rigging, because there's no work hardening on this when they're assembled. They're initially more expensive from a cost per unit and cost for labor to assemble, but they certainly do go longer. And like on this boat, we're doing the compact strand wire, which is also more expensive than normal 1x19 wire. That further, warrants using these fittings. That on top of the fact that there's a lot of questions about swedging compact strand wire, and some, whether you should or whether you shouldn't. I think that it's fine, and the companies that I've worked with, when you use the diamond dust and the Loctite and everything and swedge them correctly, I don't think there's a problem with it. But I do like the mechanical fittings on the compact strand. I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
All right, let's have a little chat. This is the 4th video that I've put out, and it's going to be the last one, about this rescue. The reason I divided it into a bunch of small episodes is because this format on YouTube doesn't do well with big, long videos. It needs to be segmented into something that people can digest. That said, I'd like to talk with you guys about my takeaway from all this information. If I were to be taking a production sailboat made for coastal cruising on a serious trip across an ocean, or 1,000 miles offshore, or even 100 miles offshore in the North Sea, anywhere that it's going to be tested, I would seriously consider getting the rig upgraded into something that was a little bit stronger. For instance, you can see in this picture is the rig that failed on the Bavaria 44, and in this picture is the rigging on the Bavaria 44 Cruising Edition. It's a huge difference. And this is a picture of my rigging on my boat. It's a bigger boat, but it's way bigger rigging, like much, much bigger, more than double as thick for the toggles. I would take my rigging apart and put some Chef Gel in between the toggle and the pin, just like Chris said. And if you are not a rigger and you don't know sailboats very well, I would very, very, very much like you guys to get a professional rigger in to check your rig over and maybe replace it before you go do something like that. It's just not worth it. What if the mast had fallen on someone and killed them? You would never be able to forgive yourself for that. So yeah, please be safe, guys. Fair winds, and let me know if I can help you at all. You can contact me through my website, www.sailingzingaro.com. Much love.